Alright, and welcome to our second geometry lesson. And in this very first part, we're going to talk about the slope of a line. Now, I've given you this graph and these 4 points, A, C, H, and B, and I've asked you to label all the points. So let's go ahead and start with point A. Where is point A? Well, I notice when I look at point A on the x-axis, it's gone over 1, 2, 3, so 3 to the right, comma, and it looks like it's gone up 1, 2 on the y-axis. So we can say, hey, it's gone to the right 3 and it's gone up 2, so it's at 3, comma 2. Okay, let's talk about point B. Well, point B has gone to the right 1, so we have a positive 1, comma, but on the y-axis it hasn't gone up, it's gone down 1, which will become a negative 1. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about H. Let's see, where's H at? Well, in fact, H hasn't gone to the right at all. It's gone to the left 1. So remember, when you're going on your x-axis and you're going to the left, those are your negative values. So it's negative 1, comma, and on the y value, it's gone down by 3. So negative 1, comma, negative 3. All right. And how about point C? You know what? I ran out of room over here, so why don't I label point C simply as negative 3, comma, negative 1. Okay, and that's how we've labeled all 4 points. So we have now answered letter A. But let's look at letter B. It says find the slope of AC, and you might remember this word slope from Algebra 1. I hope you do. And let's draw a line connecting AC. So what is a slope really? Well, slope is represented by the letter M, and we can say it is the change in y over the change in x. I'm sure if you had Miss McKay, she's told you that that triangle, it stands for the Greek symbol delta, which means change. So change in y over change in x. Now there's kind of 2 ways we can do this. We can do this simply by counting, which we'll do in the very beginning. We're here at negative 1, and so our change in y, we go up 1, 2, 3, and our change in y is positive 3 over, and notice how far to the right did we go? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We went to the right 6. And of course we could ask ourselves, well, 3 over 6, can that reduce? And in order to reduce something, we just divide by the same number. So 3 and 6 can both be divided by 3, and 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, and it turns out our slope is a positive 1 over 2. Now, what if you wanted to do this slightly different? Well, instead of delta y over delta x, we could have also used the formula y2 minus y1. Anytime you're doing a change, you are subtracting over x2 minus x1. Now this would require us to label our x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's just start with A, and I'll call this point x1, y1. Let's go over here to C. I'll call this x2, y2. And we just fill them into this formula. So our y2 value is that negative 1 minus, and our y1 value is positive 2 over, and our x2 value is going to be negative 3 minus, back up here, here's our x1 value, 3. And notice you get negative 1 minus 2 is actually negative 3 over negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. And something that you might need to refresh yourself is that a negative divided by negative is actually a positive. And as we saw earlier, 3 over 6 reduces to 1 over 2. I would encourage you to pause this video, and I'm going to move on to our second example. Okay, here we have example 2, and all I want to do is, let me just go ahead and draw just kind of a nice little standard XY axis. And let's put a point right up here. Let's call this point negative 3, comma 5. Let's put a point down here, and let's go ahead and call that 6, comma negative 1. Okay, and we will, of course, connect those points. Now here I want you to do two things. A, I want you to be able to find the slope. And B, as a refresher from our last lesson, I want you to find the midpoint. And remember, I might abbreviate midpoint as MP. Okay, so let's take a look at our slope. For a slope, we can use the letter M. And I'm going to go ahead and do the more technical way. We'll go ahead and do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And this will, of course, require us to label some things. So let's go ahead and take this point right here, and let's call this x1, y1. Let's call this one x2, y2. And remember, I use x and y because every point is in the form of x, comma, y. Okay, so what's our y2 value? Well, y2 is negative 1 minus, and over here our y1 value is going to be 5 over, and our x2 value is 6 minus our x1 value, negative 3, and of course I get something kind of funky. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 over, and wait a second, two negatives make a positive, and 6 plus 3 is in fact 9. Now because we have a negative divided by a positive, we know that our total answer will be negative. And what is 6 over 9 reduced to? Well, if you divide them both by 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so it turns out the answer to letter A, our slope, is negative 2/3. But what about our midpoint? Well, we've already labeled it x1, y1, x2, y2, so let's just write our formula. Remember, for the midpoint, you add the x's, x1 plus x2 over 2, and you add the y's, y1 plus y2 over 2, and let's see what happens once we plug everything in. So I'm going to kind of bring this down here, and let's see, our x1 value is negative 3 plus 6, our x2 value, all over 2, comma, and our y1 value will be 5 plus negative 1, our y2 value, all over 2. Let's see, what is this simplified to? Negative 3 plus 6 will, of course, be positive 3 over 2, comma, and 5 plus negative 1, well, remember, negatives take away, so 5 minus 1 would give us 4 over 2. And here's the cool thing about midpoints. If it's 3 over 2 and those don't reduce, you can literally just leave it as 3 over 2. But when I look at 4 over 2, I know that 4 divided by 2 will in fact give me 2. And so there is our midpoint, or remember, I can abbreviate as MP. Alright, so we have our slope, negative 2/3, and we have our midpoint, 3 over 2, comma 2. This should give you enough practice to be successful in these upcoming problems, and I'll see you guys in our very next section.